What kind of father cancels a $390,000 house deal the morning after his son's wedding? And why did my phone explode with 79 missed calls before noon? At my son's reception, my daughter-in-law grabbed the microphone and called me the fool who funded their big night, while my son smiled and the guests laughed. They thought I was just the wallet. They had no idea whose name was really on the contract they were counting on. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. I got to the garden venue 2 hours before the ceremony. Old habit. When you run a delivery company, you show up early and make sure everything arrives on time. The flower truck was late. I stood in the parking lot, hands in my pockets, waiting while the rental company unloaded chairs. The driver recognized me from a logistics contract we ran last year. "Mr. Torven, right? Good to see you." "Good to see you too, James." We shook hands. He asked about the business. I told him we added 2 new vans last month. He nodded, said that was smart, then went back to unloading. Nobody from the wedding party came to check on any of it. They were inside, getting ready, taking photos, living their perfect day. The catering van showed up 20 minutes later. I signed for the delivery even though I wasn't supposed to. The coordinator was somewhere inside with Zoya, probably fixing her dress or her makeup. I made sure the cases went to the right entrance. The staff thanked me. My son didn't know any of this was happening. When I walked into the garden, Anton and Lidia were already seated front row center. Big chairs with white ribbons. Zoya's parents looked like they owned the place. Anton wore a gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly van payments. Lidia had her hair done in complicated curls that didn't move when she turned her head. I found a seat 3 rows back on the side. Not terrible, but not where a father usually sits. Marta showed up 10 minutes later and sat next to me. We hadn't been married in 15 years, but we still ended up in the same places when it came to Lux. "They moved you," she said quietly. "For the photos." "Right." She didn't say anything else. We both knew what it meant. The ceremony was short. Lux stood at the altar in a rented tux that fit him well enough. Zoya looked beautiful. I'll give her that. White dress, long train, flowers in her hair. They said vows they probably found online. Everyone clapped. I clapped too. Afterward, we moved to the reception hall. Big room with tall ceilings and chandeliers that looked expensive, even if they weren't. Round tables with white cloths and centerpieces made of branches and candles. I sat at a table near the back with some of Lux's old friends from school and a couple I didn't know. The slideshow started before dinner. Photos of Lux and Zoya at the beach, at restaurants, on trips I never heard about. There were 2 pictures of me in the whole thing, one where I was half out of frame at a birthday party, another where I stood in the background holding grocery bags while Lux opened a gift. The guests watched and smiled. Nobody noticed I barely existed in my own son's life. Anton gave a toast. He stood up with a glass of champagne and talked about family, tradition, and everyone who made the night possible. He looked at his wife. He looked at Zoya. He looked at his own relatives at the next table. He did not look at me. "To everyone who believed in these 2, he said, raising his glass high. "To everyone who supported them and brought them to this moment." Cheers. Clapping. I drank and said nothing. Then Zoya took the microphone. She started with jokes, thanked her bridesmaids, thanked the venue staff, made everyone laugh with a story about Lux forgetting to pick up the rings the day before. Then she paused, smiled that bright smile she uses when she wants attention, and said, "And of course, we have to thank the fool who funded their big night." People laughed. Not nervous laughter, real laughter. "Seriously," she went on, still smiling. "Delivery guys sure can save if they don't waste money on themselves." More laughter. Lux grinned and shook his head like it was all in good fun. I sat frozen with my drink halfway to my mouth. My chest felt tight. My face got hot. But I didn't move. I finished the sip, set the glass down, and stayed in my seat while the music started and people got up to dance. I walked out 20 minutes later. Nobody noticed. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter. I could still hear the bass thumping through the walls. I went to the hotel bar attached to the venue and ordered a whiskey. Neat. The bartender poured it without asking questions. A waiter from the reception came in a few minutes later, ordering drinks for a table. He glanced at me and hesitated. "Hey, you okay?" "Fine." "That speech was, a little harsh, man." I nodded. He didn't say anything else. He took his tray and left. I sat there staring at my phone. The screen lit up with a calendar reminder. Final signing, Lux and Zoya home. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I read it twice. Then I turned off the screen and finished my drink. People always ask how I ended up paying for everything. The answer is simple. I said yes, over and over, for 29 years. It started when Lux was small. Marta and I were still together then, living in a cramped apartment near the industrial district. I was driving for a freight company, making just enough to cover rent and food. Lux needed new shoes every few months because kids grow fast. He needed school supplies. He needed a winter coat. I said yes. When I started Torven Delivery, I worked 70-hour weeks, bought 2 used vans with a loan I barely qualified for, hired 1 driver, and did the rest myself. The first year, I slept 4 hours a night and ate sandwiches in the van between stops. But the business grew. Steady contracts, reliable service. By the time Lux was in high school, I had 5 vans and a small depot with an office that didn't leak when it rained. I paid for Lux's college. Not all of it. He got some scholarships, but enough that he didn't have to work full-time while studying. I paid for his first car. I paid for the deposit on his first apartment when he graduated. Every time, he said thank you. Every time, I believed he meant it. Then he met Zoya. She was sharp, confident. She had a business degree and plans to start some kind of consulting company, though I never understood what she actually consulted about. Lux fell hard. Within 6 months, they were living together in a small rental unit downtown. The place was noisy. Thin walls, neighbors who played music at 2 a.m. They hated it. "We can't live like this forever," Lux told me one Sunday when I stopped by with groceries. "We need a real place, something we can actually call ours." "You're young," I said. "You'll get there." "Not fast enough." Zoya came out of the bedroom holding her phone. "His dad doesn't get it, babe. He's been in the same apartment for 15 years. I didn't correct her. It wasn't worth it. The request started small. A few hundred for a car repair. 1,000 to cover a gap in rent when Zoya's consulting gig fell through. Then another 1,000, then another. I kept a separate folder in my desk at the depot, a file labeled Lux, where I tracked everything. Not because I wanted it back, just because I wanted to know. One afternoon I met Marta at the cafe near the depot. She looked tired. She always looked tired when we talked about Lux. "You need to stop bailing him out," she said, stirring her coffee. "He's our son. He's 29. He has a degree. He has a job. He needs help getting started. Colum." She set the spoon down. "You're not helping him. You're teaching him that someone will always fix his problems." "A house would give them stability," I said. "If they had a place they actually owned, they could focus on building something real." "Did he ask you to buy him a house?" "Not directly. But you're thinking about it." I didn't answer. She sighed and looked out the window. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe." I had already started the process by then. Met with Pavel, a realtor I knew through a client. Looked at properties in decent neighborhoods. Ran the numbers with Nina at the bank. My credit was solid. My company had steady income. The bank pre-approved me without hesitation. I didn't tell Lux the details, just said I was helping them look. He assumed that meant advice. Zoya assumed that meant some money for a down payment. Neither of them asked whose name would be on the contract. Back at the depot, Rita came into the office one evening while I was reviewing route schedules. She's been my dispatcher for 8 years, knows the business as well as I do. "Boss, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "This house thing you're doing for Lux, are you going to be okay after?" "Why wouldn't I be?" She leaned against the door frame. "Because I've seen the numbers, and I've seen how much you've already given him, and I just want to make sure you're not putting yourself in a bad spot." "Contracts protect everyone," I said. "It'll be fine." She didn't look convinced. Neither was I. That night, sitting alone in my kitchen, I opened my phone and scrolled to the message thread with Pavel. The last text sat there unread. "Just a reminder. Tomorrow we finalize everything. After this, changes will be very difficult." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I locked the phone and went to bed. The morning after the wedding, I woke up at 6. Couldn't sleep longer than that even when I wanted to. I made coffee, stood at the window, and watched the city wake up. The closing was supposed to happen at 9, 3 hours. I decided to stop by Lux and Zoya's apartment. Brought coffee and pastries from the bakery near my place. It was a stupid idea. I knew it was stupid even as I walked up the stairs to their 3rd-floor unit. But I wanted to see them, wanted to hear them say something, anything, that made the wedding speech feel less heavy. I knocked. Lux opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt. He looked surprised. "Dad, hey, brought breakfast." "Oh, cool." He stepped aside and let me in. Zoya was on the couch with her phone, scrolling through something. She glanced up, smiled the way you smile at a delivery guy, and went back to her screen. Coffee and pastries, I said, setting the bag on the counter. Figured you'd be tired after last night. Thanks. Lux grabbed a cup and a croissant. Zoya didn't move. I stood there awkwardly, unsure what to say. Then I heard her laugh. A short, sharp sound. Babe, look at this. She held up her phone. Someone already posted a clip of my speech. It got like 200 likes. Lux leaned over her shoulder and grinned. That's hilarious. People are commenting that it was the best part of the reception. My throat felt tight. The part where you called me a fool? Zoya looked up, still smiling. Oh, come on. Everyone knows you love being the generous dad. It was just a joke. It didn't feel like a joke. Lux sighed and set his coffee down. Dad, seriously? You're being too sensitive for a grown man. I paid for that wedding. And we appreciate it, Zoya said, not looking up from her phone. But you don't have to make it weird. They started talking about the house, not asking me about it, just talking as if it already belonged to them. I'm thinking the second bedroom becomes my office, Zoya said. I need space to do calls without noise. And I want the basement for gaming, Lux added. Finally have a real setup. Did you see the backyard? Zoya turned to him. We could do a fire pit, maybe a little patio. They planned it all out loud, talked about furniture and paint colors and where to put the TV. Not once did they ask how I felt. Not once did they mention my name. I left without finishing my coffee. I walked to the park by the river, sat on a bench and watched the water. It was cold, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. I replayed the speech in my head. Every word, every laugh, the way Lux smiled instead of defending me. I thought about all the times I said yes, all the times I showed up with money or tools or time, and how it slowly turned me into background noise in my own son's life. He called when he needed something, texted when there was a problem I could fix. But when I wasn't useful, I didn't exist. I remembered a conversation with Pavel from a few weeks ago. We were at the cafe going over paperwork, and he said something I didn't think much of at the time. You, as the main buyer, have a lot of responsibility here. Main buyer, not co-buyer, not co-signer. Main. I also remembered Nina at the bank mentioning my credit score, my company history, my income stability. She said the loan approval was solid because of me, not because of Lux, not because of Zoya, because of me. The words rang louder now. I sat there for an hour, maybe longer. The cold didn't bother me anymore. I made a decision, not with anger, not with bitterness, just with clarity. I would stop acting like I was powerless. I would let the paperwork speak. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Avon's name. He's a lawyer, an old client from years ago who still uses my company for small deliveries. Quiet guy. Detail-oriented. The kind of person who reads every line of a contract twice. My thumb hovered over the call button. I didn't press it yet. Just stared at his name for a long time. Then I put the phone back in my pocket and stood up. The closing was in 2 hours. I had work to do. I didn't go to the closing. Not at 9, not at all. Instead, I went to the cafe and called Avon. He answered on the second ring. Colum, good to hear from you. You have time today? I need to talk about a property deal. Sure. My office in an hour? I'll be there. Avon's office was small, second floor of an old building downtown, narrow hallway with worn carpet. His door had his name printed on frosted glass. Inside, it smelled like old paper and coffee. He sat behind a heavy wooden desk covered in folders and binders. So, he said, pouring me a cup of tea from a thermos. What's going on? I told him. Not everything, just the important parts. The wedding, the speech, the house deal, how everyone assumed it was already done, how nobody asked if I still wanted to do it. Avon listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. Whose name is on the purchase agreement? Mine. Primarily? Yes. And the loan? Also mine. The bank pre-approved me based on my business and credit. What about Lux and Zoya? They're listed as intended residents, maybe co-signers on some documents. I don't remember exactly. Avon nodded slowly. Do you have copies of everything? Most of it. Some is still with Pavel or the bank. Okay, here's the situation. He leaned forward. If you're the primary buyer and the loan is in your name, you have significant control. You can cancel, you can delay, you can renegotiate terms. It depends on what clauses are in the contract, but usually there's a window before final closing where a buyer can withdraw. What happens if I do? You might lose your deposit. Could be a few thousand, maybe more. Depends on the agreement, but no one can force you to complete the purchase. And Lux? If he's not the main buyer, he has no legal standing to take over the deal on his own. The sellers and the bank won't just transfer everything to him. He'd have to start from scratch. I sat there staring at my tea. It was still too hot to drink. Colum, Avon said gently, why are you really here? Because I need to know if I'm allowed to stop. You are. Even if everyone thinks I'm cruel? Especially then. I left his office and went straight to the bank. Nina was at her desk going over files. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. Colum, I thought you'd be at the closing. Change of plans. Can we talk? Of course. We sat in a small glass-walled meeting room. She pulled up my file on her laptop. Everything okay? She asked. I need to understand something. If I decide not to go through with the house purchase, what happens? Her smile faded. You're thinking of backing out? Maybe. She scrolled through the documents. Well, the loan is contingent on your approval and your financial profile. Lux and Zoya aren't primary applicants. If you withdraw, the loan doesn't transfer to them automatically. They'd have to apply on their own. Would they qualify? Probably not. Not for a house that price. Their income isn't high enough, and they don't have the credit history. So the deal ends? Essentially, yes. I nodded. She watched me carefully. Colum, can I ask what's going on? Just reconsidering my risk. That's fair. This is a big commitment. If you're unsure, it's better to stop now than regret it later. I thanked her and left. Drove back to the depot. It was mid-morning now. The loading bay was busy. Rita was in the office on the phone. She waved when she saw me through the window. I sat in my small office and thought about everything. About Lux as a child, about the years of working 70-hour weeks to build something stable, about every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. Then I thought about Zoya's speech, the laughter, the way no one defended me. I opened my phone and looked at the calendar reminder again. 9 a.m., final signing. It was past 9 now. My phone had been buzzing occasionally. I'd been ignoring it. 15 missed calls, text messages I hadn't opened. Rita knocked on the door. Boss? Pavel called, said you missed the closing, asked if you were okay. I'm fine. He sounded worried. I know. She stood in the doorway, waiting for more explanation. I didn't give her one. After a moment, she nodded and left. I pulled out the labeled folder I'd been keeping. House, Lux and Zoya. Inside were copies of every document, the purchase agreement, the loan pre-approval, the inspection report, the closing schedule, my earnest money receipt. I read through everything carefully, looking for the specific language about cancellation. There it was. Section 12, subsection C. Buyer may withdraw from this agreement up to 24 hours before the scheduled closing date by providing written notice to the seller and the selling agent. I called Avon. The contract says I can withdraw up to 24 hours before closing, I said. But the closing date was changed after the contract was signed. Which date applies? When was the change made? Last week. Email confirmation, but no formal amendment. Then technically the original date in the contract is what's legally binding unless both parties signed an amendment. Did you? No, Pavel just sent an email. That's not a formal amendment. The original contract language still applies. If you act quickly, you might still be within your rights. What do I need to do? Written notice to the seller and the selling agent. Email works. State clearly that you're withdrawing. Reference the contract section. Send it immediately. I hung up and opened my email. Typed carefully. Dear Pavel and Mr. Henderson, I am writing to formally withdraw from the purchase agreement for the property at 847 Maple Ridge Drive. Per Section 12C of the signed contract, I am exercising my right to cancel this transaction. I understand that my earnest money deposit of $5,000 will be forfeited. This decision is final. Colum Torven. I read it 3 times. Then I hit send. The phone started ringing immediately. Pavel's number. I didn't answer. Then Lux. Then a number I didn't recognize. Then Zoya. Then Lux again. I turned the phone face down on my desk and sat back in my chair. My phone buzzed with texts. I didn't look. Then it rang again. Marta, I answered. Colum, what's going on? Lux just called me completely hysterical. He said you canceled the house? I withdrew from the purchase. Why? Because it's my name on the contract. My money, my decision. Colum, did he tell you about the wedding speech? Silence. Did he mention what Zoya said in front of everyone? How they laughed at me? He said it was a joke. It wasn't. More silence. I could hear her breathing. Finally, she said, "What are you going to do now?" "Nothing. I'm going to work. I'm going to run my business. I'm going to let them figure out their own lives." "They're going to hate you." "They already don't respect me. What's the difference?" She didn't have an answer. We hung up. I sat in my office for another hour. The phone kept buzzing. The missed call counter kept climbing. 10, 20, 30. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next morning, I woke up at 6 like always, made coffee, checked my phone, and saw 79 missed calls. 79. Text messages filled multiple screens, voicemails I'd never listened to. I deleted everything without reading it. At the depot, Rita was already there when I arrived. She looked at me with concern, but didn't ask questions. Just handed me the route schedule for the day and said, "Coffee's fresh." "Thanks." The vans rolled out one by one. Morning routes, commercial deliveries. The rhythm of normal work that had kept me grounded for 20 years. I sat in my office doing paperwork, reviewing client invoices, checking maintenance logs, ordinary tasks that felt extraordinary because they were mine. My choice, my control. Pavel called around 10. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Colum, finally. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days." "I know. Can you explain what happened? The sellers are threatening legal action. They had movers scheduled. They'd already bought a new place." I exercised my right to cancel. It's in the contract. "Yes, but the timing, this is extremely unusual. We'd already moved the closing date. Everyone was waiting." "The contract allows withdrawal up to 24 hours before the original closing date. I sent notice before that deadline." Silence on his end. Then, "You're technically correct. But Colum, this is going to have consequences. The sellers are furious. Lux and Zoya showed up at the property yesterday with a moving truck. They didn't understand what had happened. That's not my problem. Colum, Pavel, I appreciate everything you did, but the decision is final. Send me the paperwork for the deposit forfeiture. I'll sign it." I hung up. Around noon, Avin called. "I heard from Pavel. He's upset, but he knows you're within your legal rights. The sellers might try to sue for additional damages, but they won't win. The contract is clear." "Good. How are you holding up?" "Fine. Colum, I've known you for 15 years. You can be honest with me." I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling. Water stains from an old leak that had been fixed years ago. "I feel relieved." "That's good." "Is it? My son hates me. His wife thinks I'm vindictive. My ex-wife called me selfish." "Are you?" "Maybe, but I'm also done being taken for granted." "Then you made the right choice." We hung up. I went back to work. That afternoon, Marta showed up at the depot. I saw her car pull into the lot and knew this conversation was coming. She walked into my office without knocking, sat down in the chair across from my desk, and just looked at me. "Say it," I said. "I don't know what to say." "That's a first." Lux is devastated. They were planning their whole future around that house. They were planning their future around my money. There's a difference. You could have talked to them, warned them. Like they warned me before calling me a fool in front of 100 people. She flinched. "That was wrong. I'm not defending that." "Then what are you defending?" "Nothing. She stopped, took a breath. "I'm trying to understand why you didn't just talk to him, explain how it made you feel." "Would it have mattered?" "Maybe." "You know it wouldn't have. He would have apologized because he had to. Then nothing would have changed. They'd still see me as the wallet, still expect me to fund everything, still laugh at jokes about delivery guys being too stupid to spend their own money." She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "You're right. About some of it, at least. I've watched him take advantage of you for years. I've told you to stop. You didn't listen. I'm listening now. What happens next?" "Nothing. They figure out their own lives. Find a place they can actually afford. Learn to live without my money." "And if he never speaks to you again?" That question hit harder than I expected. I turned to look out the window at the loading bay. "Then I guess I'll know what I was really worth to him." She left without saying anything else. The days after that blurred together. Work continued. Routes ran on schedule. Clients paid invoices. The business kept moving like it always did. My phone stopped buzzing eventually. The missed calls stopped accumulating. The silence was its own kind of message. Rita asked once if I was okay. I told her I was. She didn't believe me but didn't push. That's why I'd kept her on for 8 years. She knew when to let things alone. A week later, I got a formal letter from Pavel. The earnest money deposit had been forfeited as expected. $5,000 gone. The sellers had relisted the property. They'd found a new buyer quickly. Apparently it was a good house in a good neighborhood. They weren't pursuing additional damages. The matter was closed. I filed the letter away and didn't think about it again. 2 weeks after the wedding, I was at the park again. Same bench, same view of the river. It was warmer now. Early evening. The joggers were out. Families with kids. A group of teenagers throwing a frisbee. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Torven? This is Nina from the bank. Hi, Nina. I wanted to call personally. I heard about the house situation. It's fine. I also wanted you to know Lux and Zoya came in last week. They applied for a loan on their own. I waited. They were denied. Their combined income and credit aren't sufficient for any property over $200,000. I thought you should know. Why? Because Lux implied you'd sabotage their application somehow. I wanted to clarify that's not what happened. The numbers just don't work. I appreciate you telling me. You made the right decision, Mr. Torven, for what it's worth. I've seen too many people destroy themselves financially trying to help family members who don't appreciate it. After we hung up, I sat there watching the river. The water moved slowly, steady, constant. It didn't care about weddings or houses or sons who thought their fathers were fools. It just moved. I felt lighter than I had in years, not happy exactly, but not heavy either. Somewhere in between, somewhere that felt like solid ground. 3 weeks after the wedding, I got a text from Lux. The first communication since everything fell apart. We need to talk, in person. I didn't respond immediately. Let it sit there for a few hours while I finished the day's work. Then I wrote back. Okay. When? Today? Now. Can you meet at the house? That caught me off guard. What house? The one you destroyed. 847 Maple Ridge. I almost said no. Almost told him we could meet somewhere neutral, somewhere that didn't have the weight of everything I'd taken away. But something made me agree. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need to see it through. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I drove to the house slowly, taking side streets, giving myself time to think. I hadn't seen the property since making the original offer months ago. It was in a nice neighborhood. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained yards. The kind of place where people washed their cars on weekends and knew their neighbors' names. When I pulled up, I saw 3 cars already there. Lux's Honda, a car I didn't recognize that must have been Zoya's, and Anton's black SUV with the custom wheels. Great, an ambush. They were standing in the front yard. Lux, Zoya, Anton, and Lidia. All 4 of them lined up like they were posing for a photo. The house behind them looked exactly like it did in the listing photos. Gray siding, white trim, black shutters, a red sold sign in the yard with someone else's name on it now. I parked on the street and got out slowly. Took my time walking up the driveway. None of them moved. Just watched me approach like I was something dangerous. Thanks for coming, Lux said. His voice was cold, flat. You asked me here. We wanted you to see it. The house we were supposed to have. The life you took away. I looked at the house. Nice enough. Nothing special. Just another suburban home where people would live and fight and eventually move on. I didn't take anything. I withdrew from a contract I had every right to withdraw from. You destroyed us, Zoya said. Her voice was sharp, angry. Do you understand that? We'd already made plans. We'd ordered furniture. We'd told everyone we were moving. Then you made plans based on something that wasn't yours. It was supposed to be ours, she stepped forward. You promised. I never promised anything. I said I'd help. Helping doesn't mean handing over my entire financial future. Anton moved then, positioning himself slightly in front of Zoya like a physical barrier. You need to make this right. How? Reinstate the deal, call Pavel, tell him you made a mistake. That's not possible. The sellers found another buyer. Then find another house, a different property. I almost laughed. You think I'm going to buy you a different house after what happened? After what happened? Lux's voice rose. You mean after my wedding? After one joke? One joke. I repeated the words slowly. You think that's all it was? Yes. Your wife called me a fool in front of everyone we know. She mocked me for being a delivery guy, for not wasting money on myself. She turned my entire existence into a punchline, and you smiled. You stood there and smiled and did nothing. It was a wedding toast. People make jokes. And people have consequences for those jokes. I turned to Zoya. You wanted to show everyone how clever you are, how funny, how you could get laughs at my expense. Congratulations. You succeeded. Now you get to live with what happens when you humiliate the person funding your dreams. You're vindictive, Lidia said quietly. First words she'd spoken. Cruel and vindictive. Maybe, but I'm not a fool. Anton's face was red. You're making a mistake. We have lawyers. We can make this very difficult for you. Go ahead. Avon already confirmed I acted within my legal rights. You'll waste money on lawyers and lose. Then we'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you are. We'll tell everyone how you abandoned your son when he needed you most. Tell whoever you want. I'm done caring what people think. Lux looked like he might cry, or throw something. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. I'm your son. You're 29 years old. You have a degree, a job, a wife. Figure it out. I can't afford a house on my own. Then rent, like everyone else your age. You were going to buy us this house. I was going to sign my name on a mortgage that would have stretched my company to its limits. I was going to take all the financial risk while you took all the benefit, and you were going to keep treating me like I was nothing. I took a step back toward my car. I'm done being nothing. Dad, don't. I held up a hand. Don't call me that like it means something to you. It doesn't. I know that now. I got in my car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see all four of them standing in the yard, watching me leave. Zoya was shouting something. Anton had his phone out. Lux just stood there, arms hanging at his sides. None of them followed. When I got back to the depot, Rita was still there, even though it was past closing time. She was in the office doing paperwork, radio playing quietly in the background. How'd it go? She asked without looking up. How'd what go? Whatever confrontation you just had. You've got that look. What look? The one where you're not sure if you should feel good or terrible. I sat down in my chair, suddenly exhausted. It went how it needed to go. She nodded, kept working. After a few minutes, she said, You did the right thing, boss. People keep saying that. Because it's true. I've watched you hurt yourself for that kid for years. Watched him take and never give anything back. Someone needed to draw a line. Doesn't feel great. The right thing usually doesn't. I stayed at the depot until late that night. Went through old files, organized paperwork that didn't need organizing, avoided going home to an empty apartment where I'd have too much time to think. Around midnight, my phone buzzed, a text from Marta. Lux called me. He's devastated. Says you were cruel. I typed back slowly. I wasn't cruel, I just stopped being convenient. What does that mean? It means I'm done being the person everyone uses and nobody respects. Are you happy with how this turned out? I thought about that for a long time. Was I happy? Not exactly, but I wasn't miserable either. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. I'm fine. That's not what I asked. It's the only answer I have. She didn't respond after that. I locked up the depot and drove home. My apartment was quiet, dark. I turned on one lamp and sat in the kitchen with a glass of water. The same kitchen where I'd stood weeks ago, deciding whether to go through with everything. I'd made my choice, followed through, let the consequences fall where they needed to. My phone showed 79 missed calls from the days after the cancellation. Dozens of angry texts. Voicemails full of accusations and demands. I deleted all of it. Every call log, every message, every voicemail. Cleared the entire history like it never happened. Then I set the phone down and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up once. A month passed, then two. Life settled into a rhythm that felt normal in a way it hadn't been normal in years. I worked, I ran the business, I hired a new driver to handle the overflow from 2 big contracts we'd picked up, commercial routes that paid well and kept the vans busy. Rita suggested expanding into refrigerated deliveries. I looked into it. The numbers made sense. We could add 2 refrigerated vans by spring if the projections held. Lux didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up at the depot. I told myself I didn't care. Mostly I believed it. Marta checked in occasionally. Short text asking how I was doing. I always responded the same way. Fine, good, busy with work. She stopped asking eventually. The texts became less frequent. Then they stopped altogether. One Tuesday afternoon, I was at the depot reviewing a new client contract when Nina from the bank called. Mr. Torven, I wanted to give you a heads up about something. What's that? Lux came in again yesterday, 3rd time this month. He's been trying to find a way to qualify for a mortgage. Any mortgage. And nothing. The numbers still don't work, but I'm concerned about something he said. I waited. He mentioned he's been looking at loan options that are not advisable. High-interest private lenders, subprime mortgages. the kind of things that can destroy someone financially if they're not careful. He's an adult. He makes his own choices. I know. I just thought you should be aware. These predatory lenders target people who are desperate. The terms are terrible. Most people end up defaulting within 2 years. Why are you telling me this? She paused. Because I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've seen what happens when people make these kinds of mistakes. It doesn't just affect them, it affects everyone around them. I thought you'd want to know. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the contract on my desk without really seeing it. Part of me wanted to call Lux, warn him, explain why those loans were dangerous. But what would that accomplish? He'd made his choice, I'd made mine. We were both living with the consequences. Rita knocked on the door frame. Client on line 2 wants to schedule a pickup for tomorrow morning. Transfer it. You okay? Fine. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me but left anyway. That evening, I drove past the house on Maple Ridge. I didn't plan to, just ended up there somehow, taking a route home that went through that neighborhood. The new owners had moved in, there were toys in the yard, a basketball hoop installed over the garage, a different car in the driveway, lights on inside, curtains in the windows, a family living their life, completely unaware of the drama that had surrounded the property weeks earlier. I drove past slowly, then kept going. Didn't look back. When I got home, there was an envelope taped to my apartment door. No stamp, hand-delivered. My name written in handwriting I recognized immediately. Lux's messy scrawl that hadn't changed since high school. I took it inside and opened it carefully. Dad. I don't know how to start this. I've written this letter 20 times and deleted it 19. I'm not going to apologize for being angry. I'm still angry. But I've had time to think about everything that happened, and I'm starting to understand some things I didn't want to see before. Zoya and I are getting a divorce. It's not because of the house, or maybe it is partially, but mostly it's because I realized I don't actually know her. I don't know who she is when things are hard, when money is tight, when someone can't solve all her problems. I've been sleeping on a friend's couch for 3 weeks, working double shifts, trying to figure out how to afford first and last month's rent on a studio apartment. It's humbling. That's the word, humbling. I never had to be humble before because you were always there to catch me. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me for how I treated you. I don't know if I forgive you for pulling out of the house deal. Maybe we're both wrong. Maybe we're both right. I don't know anymore. But I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better, trying to figure out who I am when I can't just call my dad to fix everything. Maybe someday we can talk. Lux. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't respond. Not yet, maybe not ever. But I kept it. The next morning at the depot, I was going through maintenance logs when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Mr. Torven, this is Detective Andrews with the police department. I'm calling about an incident involving your son. My stomach dropped. Every parent's nightmare. What happened? Is he hurt? He's fine. Not injured. But he was picked up last night for trespassing. He was found at 847 Maple Ridge Drive, the property you were previously contracted to purchase. What was he doing there? According to the new owners, he was sitting in their driveway, just sitting there in his car. Said he just wanted to see the house. They called us when he refused to leave after they asked him multiple times. Is he in custody? No. We released him with a warning. But I wanted to call you because he listed you as his emergency contact, and because he seemed not well, confused, distressed, kept talking about how the house was supposed to be his. I appreciate you calling. Mr. Torven, I don't know the situation between you and your son, but he needs help. Professional help, maybe. This kind of behavior, obsessing over a house he never owned, it's not normal. It's not healthy. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. The letter in my drawer suddenly felt heavier, more complicated. The words replayed in my head. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I can't just call my dad to fix everything. I called Marta. Did you hear about Lux? The trespassing thing. Yes. He called me from the police station. I was going to call you, but I didn't know if you'd want to hear it. What do we do? I don't know. What can we do? He's an adult. He has to decide to get help. We can't force him. Nina from the bank said he's looking at dangerous loans. The detective said he's obsessing over the house. He wrote me a letter about divorcing Zoya and sleeping on someone's couch. Silence on her end. Then, he's having a breakdown. Yeah. And we can't fix it for him. That's the whole point, isn't it? We can't keep fixing things. Not like this. I didn't want it to be like this. Then how did you want it to be? I didn't have an answer. We sat in silence for a moment. Colum, she said finally, you set a boundary, a necessary boundary. What he does with that is his responsibility, not yours. He's our son, and he's 29 years old. He needs to figure this out. If we step in now, we're just starting the cycle all over again. She was right. I knew she was right, but it didn't make it easier. We hung up. That night, I drove to the address Lux had written as his return address on the letter, an apartment building in a rough part of town, peeling paint on the exterior, broken security door that didn't lock, smell of old garbage in the hallway, graffiti on the walls. I found the friend's apartment on the 3rd floor and knocked. A guy in his 20s answered, looked tired, suspicious, worn out. Is Lux here? Who's asking? His father. The guy's expression shifted. Recognition, maybe pity. He's not here. Where is he? I don't know. He left this morning and hasn't come back. Honestly, man, I don't know if he's coming back. He's been getting worse, talking about the house constantly, about proving something, about how he was supposed to have a different life. I can't handle it anymore. I've got my own problems. If you see him, tell him to call me. Sure, whatever. The door closed. I stood in the hallway for a moment, surrounded by the smell of old food and mildew, then left. I drove around for hours. Checked the park where I'd sat after the wedding, drove past the depot, went to the house on Maple Ridge again, half expecting to find Lux sitting in the driveway like the detective described. He wasn't anywhere. Around midnight, I gave up and went home. Sat in my kitchen with the lights off, phone on the table in front of me, waiting for it to ring. It didn't. I finally fell asleep in the chair around 3 a.m. At 5:30, my phone rang. Marta. He's at the hospital. I was already grabbing my keys. What happened? I don't know the details. They called me as his emergency contact. He came in on his own. You should come. Which hospital? St. Mary's, downtown. I drove faster than I should have. Made it to the hospital in 15 minutes. Found Marta in the waiting room. Her face was pale, eyes red like she'd been crying. Where is he? They're evaluating him. Psychiatric evaluation. He came in on his own, voluntary admission, said he needed help. What kind of help? Mental health evaluation. He told them he was having thoughts about harming himself. They took him seriously, admitted him immediately. I sat down hard in one of the plastic chairs, the kind that are designed to be uncomfortable so people don't stay too long. Is he going to be okay? I don't know. They said it'll be at least 72 hours before we can see him. Standard protocol for psychiatric holds. We sat there in silence. The hospital at dawn was quiet, except for occasional announcements over the intercom and the hum of vending machines down the hall. Nurses walked past. Doctors. Other people waiting for news about their own family members. Everyone looked tired. Everyone looked worried. This is my fault, I said finally. No. I pushed him too far. I took away the one thing he thought would fix his life. Colum. She turned to look at me. Dark circles under her eyes. You set a boundary. A reasonable boundary. What he did with that is his choice, his responsibility, not yours. He fell apart. He was already falling apart. We just couldn't see it because you were always there catching him before he hit bottom. You stopped catching him long enough for him to actually hit. That's not your fault. That's just reality. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be comforting. It's just true. Sometimes the truth isn't comfortable. We stayed until morning, watched the sun come up through the waiting room windows. A doctor finally came out around 7. Young woman with dark hair pulled back. Tired eyes, but a kind face. Are you family? His parents. Lux is stable, resting. We've started him on medication to help with the anxiety and depression. We're going to keep him for observation. Minimum 72 hours. Possibly longer, depending on how he responds. He'll need ongoing therapy after discharge, support, structure. But he took the right step coming in. A lot of people don't. Can we see him? Not yet. Maybe tomorrow. Let him rest today. Let the medication start working. Is he going to be okay? I asked. She looked at me with those tired, kind eyes. That depends on a lot of factors, but he's getting help. That's the first step. The most important step. We left. Marta went home. I went to the depot. Rita took one look at me and said, "Go home, boss. Get some sleep." I can't. Then sit in your office and don't talk to anyone. You look terrible, like you haven't slept in days. I haven't. Then seriously, go home. The business will survive one day without you. But I couldn't go home. Couldn't sit in my empty apartment thinking about Lux in a hospital bed. So I did what she said, sat in my office with the door closed and stared at nothing. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Lux. They let me have my phone for a few minutes. I'm sorry, for everything. I'm getting help. Don't blame yourself. This isn't your fault. This was coming for a long time. I just didn't want to see it." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Focus on getting better. We'll talk when you're ready. Take all the time you need." "Okay, thanks, Dad." That was it. The whole conversation? I put the phone down and went back to staring at nothing. Rita brought me coffee around 2, set it on my desk without saying anything, just squeezed my shoulder once and left. The coffee got cold while I sat there thinking about everything. About the wedding speech, about the house, about watching my son's life fall apart and knowing I'd played a part in it. About whether I'd done the right thing or just been cruel. I didn't have answers. Around 4, I finally left. Drove home, sat in my apartment with all the lights off, watched the city through the window as evening fell. My phone stayed silent. 6 weeks passed. Lux stayed in the hospital for 12 days. When they finally released him, he went to a halfway house, part of his treatment program, learning to live independently, make better decisions, take responsibility for his own life without someone always there to catch him. He called me on a Thursday afternoon. Not a text, an actual phone call. His voice sounded different, quieter, more careful, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. "Hey, Dad. Hey, I'm out. They released me 3 days ago. How are you feeling?" "Better. Different. It's hard to explain. The medication helps. The therapy helps. Everything feels less overwhelming now." "That's good." Silence for a moment. Then, "Can we meet? Just coffee or something? I understand if you don't want to, but I'd like to try." I almost said no. Almost found an excuse. Almost told him I was too busy. But something stopped me. "Yeah. When?" "Tomorrow? That cafe near your depot? The one we used to go to?" "Okay, 2 o'clock. "Thanks. I mean it. Thank you." He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a cup of coffee that looked untouched. He looked thinner, hair longer and unkempt, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit right, like they belonged to someone else or he'd lost weight and hadn't replaced his wardrobe yet. He stood up when he saw me. "Thanks for coming." "Of course." We sat down awkwardly. I ordered coffee. We didn't speak until it arrived. The silence was heavy but not hostile, just uncertain. "I'm living in a halfway house," he said finally, looking down at his cup. "Part of the treatment program. Structured living, learning to live independently, make better decisions, take responsibility. There are rules, curfew, chores, group therapy 3 times a week." "That's good." "I'm sorry for everything. The wedding, the house, all of it." He looked up at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. "I treated you like an ATM machine, like you only existed to solve my problems, like your only value was what you could give me." "Yeah. I didn't see it at the time. I thought I deserved your help. That you owed it to me because you're my dad. That's what fathers do, right? They help their kids. But I confused help with enabling. Confused love with obligation. And now? Now I understand that's not how it works. You don't owe me anything just because we're related. Respect goes both ways. Love goes both ways. I have to earn those things. I can't just demand them." I sipped my coffee. It was too hot, but I drank it anyway. "What about Zoya?" "The divorce is almost final. She moved back in with her parents. Last I heard, she's looking for someone new. Someone with more money, probably. We don't talk. My therapist says that's healthy." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, mostly. We were never right for each other. I just wanted to look successful. Wanted to have what everyone else seemed to have. She wanted someone to fund her lifestyle, to make her look good on social media. Neither of us actually loved who the other person was. We loved the idea, the image, not the reality." I nodded. We sat in silence for a while. Other customers came and went. The barista made drinks. Life continued around us while we tried to figure out what our relationship looked like now. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Lux said after a while. "I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better, trying to be someone worth knowing." "I know." "Are you okay with everything that happened?" I thought about it. Was I okay? Not entirely, but I wasn't miserable. Wasn't consumed by guilt or anger. I'm figuring it out. "Do you regret pulling out of the house deal?" No. Even with everything that happened after? Even knowing I ended up in the hospital? Especially with everything that happened after. You needed to fall. I needed to stop catching you. My therapist says the same thing yours does. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face consequences. You're seeing a therapist? Started 2 weeks ago. Rita insisted, said I needed to talk to someone about everything. He nodded slowly. My therapist said basically the same thing about the house. Said you probably saved both of us by setting that boundary. That if you'd gone through with it, I never would have hit bottom, never would have gotten help. We finished our coffee. Made small talk about work and weather and nothing important. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. Can we do this again? Coffee, I mean. Maybe once a month or something? No pressure. Just if you're willing. Maybe. I'll take maybe. That's better than no? He left first. I watched him walk away, shoulders hunched against the cold, and felt something complicated. Not forgiveness exactly, not reconciliation, but not nothing either. Something in between, something that might grow into something better, given time. At the depot, Rita asked how it went. Weird. Good weird or bad weird? Just weird, different, like talking to someone I used to know but don't anymore. She nodded and went back to work. That night in my apartment, I pulled out the letter Lux had written weeks earlier. Read it again. The words felt different now, more real, less desperate. Then I pulled out a piece of paper and wrote back. Lux. I got your letter. I appreciate you writing it. I'm not good at this kind of thing. Feelings and conversations and figuring out what to say. Never have been. But I want you to know I don't hate you. I was hurt, angry, disappointed, but not hate. Never hate. You're working on being better. That's good. Keep doing that. One day at a time, like they probably tell you in therapy. Maybe someday we'll figure out what our relationship looks like when it's not based on me giving you money and you taking it. I don't know what that looks like yet, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we're both figuring it out. Take care of yourself. Dad. I sealed it in an envelope and mailed it the next day. 2 months later, Lux got an apartment. Nothing fancy. Studio in a decent neighborhood. He invited me to see it. The place was sparse, secondhand furniture, small kitchen, but it was his, paid for with his own money from the job he'd kept and the overtime shifts he'd worked. What do you think? He asked. It's good. Yeah? Yeah, it's yours. That matters. He showed me around like it was a mansion, pointed out the closet he'd organized, the cheap dishes he'd bought at a thrift store, the bed he'd assembled himself following YouTube instructions. He was proud, actually proud of something he'd done on his own without anyone's help. Before I left, he handed me something, an envelope. What's this? $500, first payment. First payment for what? Everything I owe you. I added it up, all the money you gave me over the years, every car repair, every rent check, every grocery run. It's $23,000 and change. This is the first installment. I'm paying you back. It'll take me years, probably, but I'm doing it. Lux, you don't have to. I know, but I want to. I need to. It's part of making things right, part of being responsible. My therapist says it's good for me. Helps me take ownership. I took the envelope, didn't open it, just held it. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when you should have, even when I gave you every reason to. After I left, I sat in my car for a while before starting the engine. The envelope sat on the passenger seat. $500 that I didn't need and he probably couldn't spare. But the gesture meant everything. 5 years after the wedding, I got an invitation in the mail. Heavy cardstock. Elegant but simple printing. Lux Torven and Cleo Marver request the pleasure of your company at their wedding reception. They'd gotten married quietly at a courthouse 6 months earlier. Just them and 2 witnesses. Now they were having a small party to celebrate. Close friends and family only. 20 people, maximum. I arrived at their house, a small ranch they'd bought 2 years ago, now renovated and warm, and found about 20 people scattered across the backyard. String lights hung between trees, simple decorations, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just real. Lux saw me and waved me over. He looked different, older, confident in a way he hadn't been before, happy in a way that seemed genuine. Dad, thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it? Cleo hugged me. I'm glad you're here. As evening fell, Lux stood on their small patio and clinked a glass. Everyone quieted. I want to thank everyone for being here. This isn't a big wedding, no fancy venue, just the people we care about." He paused, looked at Cleo with genuine love. 5 years ago, I got married for the wrong reasons. That marriage fell apart because it was built on nothing real. He looked at me. This marriage is different. It's built on two people who work hard, who don't expect anyone to solve their problems. And I wouldn't have gotten here if someone hadn't loved me enough to let me fail. My throat felt tight. "Dad, thank you for stepping back when you did. Thank you for teaching me that respect is earned. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like." He raised his glass. Everyone drank. After the toast, Lux came over. "I have something for you," I said. "What?" I pulled out the envelope. The account statements. Every payment he'd made over 4 years. All of it saved. "You saved it all?" "Every payment. It's yours. Always was." He stared at the papers. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just keep being who you've become." He hugged me hard. The party continued. Music, laughter, real joy. As I was leaving, my phone buzzed. A text from Pavel. "Colum, I have a property you might be interested in. Small commercial space. Perfect for expanding your business." I smiled and drove home through streets I'd driven 1,000 times. At home, I looked at the account statement one more time. The house deal I'd walked away from. The years of distance that brought us here, all of it necessary. My phone rang. Lux. "Hey, Dad. Cleo and I want to take you to lunch tomorrow. Our treat." I typed back. "Sounds good." And just like that, life was exactly what it was supposed to be. I sat back in my chair, looked around my small apartment, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace.